This is Show Up as a Leader, a show from PeopleForward Network, helping you maximize your positive impact on the world by becoming your best, fully authentic self.
Hey everybody, it is Rosie, and it is time for another quarterly installment of our Courageous Leadership series. This is where my dear friend, Nikki Lewallen Gregory, kind of turns the tables on me, and we just do a deep dive discussion into some aspect of courageous leadership. And sometimes it's just kind of having a geek out back and forth session, and sometimes she's getting some coaching and you can learn from it. And this was a really special conversation for this installment for a couple of reasons. One, it was the first one we actually did live in the PeopleForward Network community, and we had a live audience. So I will say, if you want to be part of our next installment, part of the live audience, let us know if you like it, and we'll keep doing these live. So it was really fun to have people interact with us while we were having the conversation. And two, we did a really deep dive into our research. Specifically, this episode is on the core faulty programs and the cousin programs that we identified that hold us back. And we've alluded to them and mentioned them in previous conversations. But this is a deep dive that's really normalizing the messiness of being human, starting to actually talk about some of the steps of how do we go to upgrade it, why we need to think differently about change, how do we lead ourselves and others through change, and how do we lean in and embrace the messiness of being human in different seasons of our life rather than standing in judgment of ourselves, judgment of other people. I hope you get a ton out of this. I hope that it resonates for you, and I would love to hear which of the faulty programs you think might be running the show for you. So let's just dive in. Take a listen.
Hey, it's Nikki Lewallen Gregory, and I'm here with my pal Rosie Ward for our quarterly Courageous Conversation series, where basically what this has turned into is a coaching session for me with Rosie. Every once in a while, I'm like, oh, I have something to add that's a little, insight to that. Most of it is just digging in to be curious so that I can learn. And I think you all have heard this topic area that we've talked about before together, because it is like their jam right now at Salveo Partners, and the 7 faulty programs have so much to learn. They also have the 3 cousin programs. So we're going to be touching on this regularly. I was thinking in my head how to tee it up. I started learning DISC when I was about 25, and DISC very different, but it's a way of understanding ourselves, right? A self-assessment. I continue to study that. So we're going to be talking about this a lot. So if you've heard this before, there's going to be new content today. And I'm so excited to dig in and understand the faulty programs that hold us back as leaders. And we're ready to dig in. Rosie, are you ready?
I am so ready. I'm just geeking out. Here we go.
Okay. I love it. And I love your background today. I feel like just like calm and centered because of it. So
if you're watching a video, just a heads up, I'm in a totally different atmosphere. I'm doing caretaking for my parents. And so we're keeping our fingers crossed that my internet stays stable. But, we're going to deal with it. This is a VUCA world, so we're all good.
That's right. That's right. VUCA. If you've never heard VUCA before, we'll be touching on that. I bet today it was a new word I learned from Rosie and team. So, all right, well, let's dig in. Let's talk about the background of this research. I know that you and the team did not take this anywhat near lightly. There are hundreds of interviews and so much research gone into talking with different leaders, and the just research digging in that you've done to learn and create these faulty programs and their cousins. So let's talk about the research background and then introduce to us those faulty programs and the cousins to lay the land for today.
Absolutely. So really just a high level, my brain works in patterns. I just have always been able to connect the dots of, hey, this is related to this, and hey, this is related to this. And it was the death of me in my doctoral program, because I was like, hey, let's merge 50 things together and try to make it cohesive. And along the way, I've been coaching for over, 21 years and consulting with organizations for about that long. And I just started seeing the same thing showing up where teams would struggle, where organizational culture would struggle, where leaders individually would struggle. And, you just see enough patterns, you're like, God. And then over the last several years, when I launched the podcast, actually, I made an intentional choice that this one core question that I was going to ask every single guest that I interview is, what is a self-limiting story that you still tell yourself? Because I want to normalize the messiness of being human. And I have just seen that it doesn't matter if someone is, new into their career, if they are in the seasoned legacy years of their career, if they're CEO of a $1 billion company, or, they're just a fill in the blank, whatever the role might be, there's a shared human experience. And I think we get in our own way, and I call it head trash, of thinking about ourselves in a small way and thinking someone else has it all together. And I'm like, no, I want every single guest. I want people listening to hear like they're human just like you, even though they're sharing wisdom and nuggets and whatnot, because the line to success is never straight anyway. And so as I started doing that, I started to see patterns show up from asking that question. And along the way, we're working with our clients, we're coaching leaders of all shapes and sizes. And as I'm coaching them, I would experience them say something like, am I the most messed up person you've had? Should I just lay on a couch? Am I screwed up? Like they would have this self-deprecating, like there's something wrong with them. And over the last few years, I just started saying, no, trust me, I've seen this hundreds of times. I'm convinced there's only 8 or 10 of these assumptions, limiting assumptions, but I don't know. I'm just guessing. Like I've seen this a gajillion times. So a little over a year ago, maybe it's over 2 years ago by now, we said, you know what? I think we have enough data. Can we do a data dump and start digging into this? And so we use a very specific coaching process. It's not the only one we use, but where we really transform leaders and transform this head trash. And it's called Immunity to Change from Harvard. And so you end up with like this map and you identify the faulty assumptions and what people want to get better at, but they're struggling. So we had all of these like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these maps. And so we took that plus the interview data from the podcast of asking the question and lumped it all together in a big old spreadsheet and started doing data analysis to see what patterns emerged. What did we see? And it took about a year to do it. If you've ever done qualitative data analysis, it's painful. But we took a 5-year chunk of data. We're like, okay, we can't just go forever. So we just decided to take a 5-year chunk of data, over 250 leaders, and just wanted to see, were there patterns? Like, was my instinct right? And what are those? And it turned out to be right. And there were some that I was like, yep. And there was a couple that surprised me that I was like, that's interesting. So we wanted to come up with relatable names, which is why we kind of have the fun names. And then we were like, well, what do we call them? And then we're like, well, it's really our inner operating system. It really is our programming. So that's why we call it the faulty programs.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I love inner operating system. Can we dig in and go ahead and share the names of those different fluffy programs and the cousins? And then I know enough because of some past conversations that I might share a few like prompts from what's happening with me that you can help work there.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. And I will just say, like, as I'm going through these, I'm going to go really high level, but we also beta tested these. So as we started identifying these, I would be speaking at conferences and we'd be doing events. And I would ask, raise your hand if these resonate for you. And every single hand would go up. And then we started doing workshops and actually having people identify which ones are their top ones and putting them in groups. And people are like, oh my God, this gives me language. It makes so much sense. So if these resonate, you're human, you're in good company.
I'll share with you just real quick. I remember before when I think on one of our episodes, we featured like 3. And of the 3, I was like, oh, that one, that's me. Like they're named so well. And that quick little description, you're probably as a listener, probably going to be like, oh, that's me. Right. Okay. Rosie, take it away.
The first and most common one is what we call the counterfeit. And the counterfeit fears vulnerability. So they don't like leaning into uncertainty, risk, or emotional exposure. We fear being perceived as weak. We fear letting our guard down, that we might be taken advantage of. We feel like we always have to have it all together and show strength. We feel like we have to keep our emotions in check. We feel like we can't let our true imperfect self show. So we might compare ourselves to other people. We might hide parts of ourselves, hide our authentic self. Again, feeling like we have to be something other than we are. And then we overcompensate for various feelings of being less than. So that's the counterfeit. And I will just tell you that what was really interesting in the data is you hear a lot of people throw out the term imposter syndrome. And just as a precursor, we actually found that that's different than the counterfeit. So we did identify one of our cousin programs that we call the fraud. And the fraud is where imposter syndrome comes in. And the reason I'm saying that is that these cousin programs that we'll get to are related, but they never stood alone. Like they always were in conjunction with one of these core programs. And in particular, the fraud is 100% of the time goes hand in hand with a counterfeit. So everyone that has the fraud has the counterfeit. The difference is I could have the counterfeit, but I don't quite have that imposter syndrome, which is fear of being found out. So it's all of those things I just mentioned, but now it's like, ooh, someone's going to figure out, I don't know what I'm talking about. I didn't deserve this position. I didn't deserve this opportunity, whatever it is. And so the fraud takes it to like, it's like on steroids type of a thing. So I just will bring that up. So again, by far the most common one. And we can talk about like what they struggle with, but it'll be thoughts like, I can't let my guard down. I don't want to look weak. I'm not as talented, blah, 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 as that person, those types of things. Then we have the overachiever, and the overachiever kind of has a warped sense of our value proposition. So it is where we feel that somehow our value is conditional on how much we get done, on our accomplishments, on how productive we are. And what's really hard about this one is, in general, our work environment rewards the overachiever faulty program to a fault, right? We believe that doing more is the only path for success, that we have to take on more to prove our worth. So it's coming from a place of fearing of really not being enough. And that, again, that value is conditional. So we have things like, I have to work harder to not let people down, or getting results is ultimately what matters. Or, again, we take on more than we have the bandwidth for, and don't ever want people to think we're not working hard. And you can see how that is just a recipe for burnout. So you can even have the most thriving workplace culture that really promotes boundaries and promotes, harmony in between our work and personal lives. But if I have an underlying faulty program that I have to constantly prove my worth and value, it's not going to matter until I fix that. So certainly the environments can amplify this, but that inner operating system has been there. I'm just going to tell you, in the first 10 or so years of our life is where this was downloaded. And so then the next most common one is, we call it the people pleaser, or actually the perfectionist is next. So the perfectionist is fairly self-explanatory, but it's where we might have this thought of, well, it's okay for other people to fail, but somehow I'm excluded from that. So we get really self-critical. We feel like if we can somehow be perfect, then we can avoid judgment. And so what's really interesting, so think in the work environment, if someone is running a perfectionist program, they may get behind on emails, or in the world of healthcare, physicians get behind on charts, or it takes them extra long for deliverables because in their mind, it needs to be just perfect before they can send it or get it done or pass it along. And so it becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy because then they are letting people down. And so perfectionists can get in our way in a whole host of ways. We're just really meticulous, spend way too much time on things because, again, we're fearing judgment, and we don't want to put anything out there that isn't fully vetted, fully perfect, all of those things, because it's just, failure is not an option for them. Then we have the people pleaser, and the people pleaser, again, fairly self-explanatory. But when this program is running our inner operating system, we fear rejection. This is we all have a core need for belonging, but this is this fear that we're going to be rejected at any moment and that we don't actually belong. And so we're going to do all kinds of things to put our needs on the back burner, to not speak up and have difficult conversations, because it's anything is I need people to like me. And if they don't, that is very, very awful. So I need to be liked. Any pushback or disagreement with me is actually a rejection of me. I'm an outsider, on this team or in this group. It's those types of things. And so they're constantly working themselves, twisting themselves into a pretzel, if you will, so that they don't experience that rejection. The next one we have is the control freak. Again, we try to put fairly self-explanatory names, and the control freak gets they all are not helpful, but the control freak gets a bad rap, and people don't like to admit that this one is running them. But the control freak fears uncertainty. And so basically they struggle in this VUCA environment, and they try to feel like, if I can control situations, conversations, things around me, if I can ensure things are done, quote unquote, the right way, AKA my way, it's coming from a place of somehow they feel like they can actually prevent bad things from happening. So they are shouldering a burden that isn't theirs to own, of controlling everything, therefore it will be done and I can fear bad stuff. So they end up asserting their rightness if things aren't going their way. They will control conversations. They can sometimes become rigid and inflexible. You might hear yourself say things like, I'm the only one who knows how to do this the right way, or my way is the best or most effective, or it's my responsibility to make sure things happen the right way. I need to know what's happening next, a deep need for predicting. The next one is the mime. And the mime on the surface can look very similar to the people pleaser because behaviorally they show up, but it's coming from a very different fear and very different head trash script, if you will. So whereas the people pleaser fears rejection, mimes fear disharmony. They pride themselves on being a peacekeeper. So they will jump into stabilized situations that aren't theirs. If there's conflict or something, they are so uncomfortable with any level of discord that it just sends them into a tizzy. So again, they are going to probably avoid speaking up and self-silence and these types of things, but they're going to have thoughts like any conflict is bad, or relationships can't recover if there's conflict, or conflict is too uncomfortable for me to handle, or it's my job to keep the peace. And again, in a workplace, we write about this in our upcoming book, but there's leaders where they actually get rewarded because, oh, your team is so harmonious, but it's false harmony because people aren't speaking up. then you end up, what happens is deep resentment, because the more we shove it down and we're not speaking up and we're not letting healthy conflict surface, then resentment is there, which is never helpful. The martyr is the last core faulty program, and the martyr fears dependency. So this shows up in one of two ways. It can fear dependency from a standpoint of, I don't want to be a burden on people. I don't want to appear selfish. My needs don't matter. That type of narrative. It can also show up in this hyper self-reliant, hyper independent. I can't rely on anybody. I have to be self-sufficient. It's all up to me type of a thing. So regardless of which one, the martyr, more than any other program, although other programs struggle as well, really hard time with boundaries. And so as an example, when we start looking like they struggle with their calendar of working on the business versus in the business, of setting boundaries, of being present at home, their self-care, the list goes on. And when we've worked with people who are running this program predominantly, I'm like, let me guess, no matter how many tip sheets you've been given on time management, no matter how many trainings you've gone to or inspirational books or speakers you've listened to on boundaries, it lasts for about 20 seconds and you snap right back. And they're like, are you psychic? I'm like, no, it's because this is what the martyr programming does to you. Again, it's our inner operating system that drives everything behind the scenes. And so once you recognize it, then you can start the path to upgrade it. So those are the core ones. And then I'll just say that I already talked about the fraud, faulty cousin program. The other cousin program that we identified that actually really surprised me is called the protector. And the protector is one where we actually hold ourselves responsible for someone else's outcome or experience, like their emotional experience, their results. And so we are trying to protect them from struggle. We're trying to protect them from pain. So you can see as a leader, it leads to, it's like giving someone a fish sandwich rather than teaching them how to fish. So that one shows up quite a bit. That is really, really challenging for people.
And did I miss? So for the cousin, we talked about the fraud and then the protector. What, did you just say the other one?
Oh, no, I didn't. And now I'm having a brain fart.
Okay.
It'll come back to me. I swear. See,
Yeah.
this is humanness on full display. It'll come back to me.
We'll just come right back to it. I mean, that was a lot to remember. By the way, I'm writing them all down. So I've got 7, 8, 9. I have 9 because there's 7 and then 3. So, I mean, you rattled those off really, really well. Come back to it whenever it pops up. So, you were sharing, this is our inner operating system. Love that way of phrasing it. You also said something about a lot of this is because of the first 10 years of our life, right? Like how we grow up and what we're around, our environment shapes us. And we spend years unlearning or learning new things to go where we want to go in life, to not be held back, right? And so I think you had mentioned earlier, I forget which example it was, I think it was the martyr maybe, about, reading a book, listening to a podcast, going to a training, it sticks for 20 minutes and then you're back. Like, this is the deep inner work that I share regularly that is often missed in leadership, because we typically bring the tactical, here's a 3-step solution or system for better relationship building with your team, right?
Yep.
And you're like, okay, I'm going to tie in those 3, but I am, the control freak. So every time that I'm on my one-on-ones using this beautiful system, I am trying to change and shift the outcome that they're working on or how they're going to do it, because I'm too scared of what could happen if we don't do it my way or something, right? So this is the part, to tie this all together and why this is so powerful. And we're going to have lots of episodes on it. There's a book coming really soon on this. It's the deep stuff that most avoid because it's not easy. Like, this is like looking yourself in the mirror and being like, okay, yep, total overachiever. I'm just self-proclaimed a lot of these. I've had to work through a lot. Some of them I'm on the other side and getting better. Definitely still number 2, the overachiever for sure.
So I remember the other one. The other cousin program is the dropout. And the dropout is where we have a fear of sounding stupid or looking incompetent. And so the dropout, again, you can see that it either gets paired with overachiever and control freak, because they think like, oh, if I do that, then I'm going to somehow eventually feel like I'm competent, or I'm going to overcompensate because inside I really feel like I'm dumb or have nothing to contribute, or it can turn into mime where I'm going to self-silence. So there's a whole lot of ways they show up. But here's what I will tell everyone listening is that the other thing that is really critical, but yes, the cousin programs are always in tandem with another one, but they have their unique characteristics. What we found is like there's some unique stuff there, but then it's easier to start to upgrade the core programs when you look at them as like a puzzle piece that are kind of connecting hand in hand. But most people are running more than one of the core faulty programs. We found very few people that only have one. They piggyback off each other and they'll look slightly differently depending on how it is. So it was funny because as we were going through this, I mean, I've done upgrade journeys multiple times. Like this is the other thing I need people to understand is that this isn't a one and done. This is a lifelong journey when you talk about the deep inner work. But here's the thing. Once you do that initial, I call it the cringy, hard initial upgrade. You know, like think about like when your computer crashed or you get a brand new computer and it's got to do a gajillion upgrades to get it to the latest version. But then like you have a power outage or something and you have to do a quick hard reboot, but subsequent upgrades don't take as long. And so it's like the initial upgrade is a good 6 to 8 month process of really intentional work. But then after that, that's when you can lean on some of these tools as reminders to quick get back in alignment. Oh yeah, here we go. And it's like a quick upgrade, if you will. It's not like the full, if that makes any sense. So I just think that's really important to put out there to level set expectations on the messiness of being human. And the other thing that I will say is that as we were identifying these, I started laughing my butt off because I was like, well, for the love of God, I've had at least 4, if not 5, perhaps all of these at some point in time. But I will tell you that the counterfeit I mostly upgraded, like for the most, doesn't mean it doesn't creep up, but that one's mostly gone. The perfectionist, I've long since retired that. I'm like, I can't even pretend to hold crap together anymore, right? Like here we are, life goes on. I also deeply had the martyr. And here's the thing, sometimes these programs serve us well. Like I mentioned that I'm in the middle of caretaking. Well, martyr serves well when you got to jump in and do some of that stuff, but there's a point where it's going to bite you in the butt. You have to ask for help. You have to let others in. So I would say that there's also parts of these programs that have served us well and gotten us to a helpful point, but they're limiting. So we've got to recognize what parts of them, like, thank you for giving me like overachiever. Thank you for giving me a drive and a hard work ethic and all that. But I've got to recognize a boundary of when you're taking over and you're not helpful. So I will say for me, the overachiever is another big one, but it has changed for me. So that one's my ongoing kryptonite. But what's changed is I no longer have this warped sense that my value is dependent on what I get done. Like that part of the overachiever is long gone. But the behaviors of just thinking I can do more than I can, thinking, sure, I can squeeze one more thing in, that is my ongoing kryptonite, where I have constant reminders and constant practices and constant community around me to help me keep that in check because it's just so ingrained. So it's like the value part has changed, but the behaviors, it's like, okay, now what tool can I lean on to just remind me? Because that one's just, and I used to have the people pleaser pretty darn bad. I used to hate growth feedback conversations. I still don't like them, but I've gotten to the point that I don't procrastinate on them and I use the tools and I'm like, you know what? A little bit of discomfort is actually going to be better for everybody and let's just freaking go. And so, but that was one as a leader. Oh my God, it was the death of me until I upgraded that people pleasing program.
So I was just thinking about this statement that I shared around, this is really deep inner work stuff. Like this is probably the hardest work you'll do in your life. It's and it never stops, right? Like, cause things can creep back in. And so I think like, let's talk through the change, the best way to lead change through this and how you do that with the people that you coach and how you help leaders become those change agents as well with their people. So just a couple of things I was thinking and help me here. One is I think there's some power before we go to awareness directly of like, this is mine, right? Like, and go through the process and, you know, read the book, go through the assessment, all that, whatever. This is mine and being aware, because the first step towards change is being aware of what you want to change, right? But I'm thinking before that, giving yourself some time to reflect on where this came from. I think there's so much power in that because you start to trace back. And I'm just like remembering like being on the softball field or the soccer field and connecting the dots on perfectionism. And, you know, I'm like, yeah, like I see where that is. Were my parents trying to do that? No, like they're struggling with that probably too and have worked through it. But just doing some reflection on where it came from, because you came by it honestly, it was part of your environment, right? That shaped you. And then going to the awareness of identifying this faulty program or cousin or both and that you need to work to change. Like you want to change this, and give me any feedback on if I said anything out of line there. But what I want your insight on, Rosie, is then how to start to lead change as what you do in your team or how you help leaders become those coaches?
Yeah. I'm going to do one little tweak. And granted, you can do stuff in any order, but what I would say is, and this is going to be in the forthcoming book, but that if any of these resonate, just jot down, right? If you have 3 or if you have 4, like I did, or 2 or whatever it is. And I would say that's actually the first step, is to name it. Because here's the thing, is when that script, again, I call it the head trash that's a result of that programming. When that programming and that head trash is running the show, we believe those thoughts as if they're true and we think they're part of us. And there's something to be said. We could get into the whole science and psychology of it, of when you name it, like, oh, that's just my counterfeit, or that's just my overachiever. It suddenly moves from you being what we call subject to it, where you're hijacked by it, to you, it's an object. Like now you're viewing it from a distance. You're an observer of, oh, that's not me. That's my fill in the blank. That's my martyr overachiever combo. So what we say in the book, we go through each faulty program has its own chapter, and we kind of go through in depth and tell stories, et cetera, but it's name it. Because then suddenly it's like, oh, that's not me. Oh my God, I have no value. That's my people pleaser trying to run the show. And so you're recognizing that that's in the driver's seat right now. And what you're trying to do is recognize it's in the driver's seat, and then be able to go, okay, I need to kick that thing to the back seat. Because really, when it's in the driver's seat, it's not our adult self that's showing up, reacting, or showing up for any decision-making process, conversation, work. It's our 10-year-old self. So I don't know about you, but I wouldn't let a 10-year-old drive my car or, make important decisions, but that is exactly what's happening. So when we're looking at the dynamics of challenges of moving through change, recognize that for the most part, it's not a bunch of adults sitting around trying to move through change. It's a bunch of self-protective 10-year-olds trying to figure it out. It's not meant in any kind of demeaning way. It's when you name it, you go, okay, how can then I lean in with maybe more curiosity and more empathy, and look at how can we find the adult versions? How can we move the adult versions that are like in the trunk or the back seat or left on the road and get them back in the driver's seat, is really what we're trying to do. And again, it's a shared human experience. So naming it first is critical. Then it's like, okay, then to your point, Nikki, you kind of look at, well, where did it come from? Like for me, and I'm very open about this, I share the story in speaking engagements, but I'm the youngest of 5 girls, overachieving family. Everyone was expected to get good grades and be the best at whatever their thing was, right? And for me, I had very different interests than my sisters. So where the counterfeit came in was some stuff that happened in our household, but also just me feeling like I didn't belong in this family and I was different. And in order for me to be accepted, I thought that I had to be someone who I wasn't. I thought I had to be more like my sisters. So that's where my counterfeit came in. My martyr came in because I joked that by the time they got to me, my parents were kind of done being parents. So, I grew up in the 80s. So it was a lot of being by yourself, taking care of yourself. So I can definitely see where the martyr came in. People pleasing was, not wanting to be rejected and whatnot, and get yelled at as a kid. And I internalized it to mean there's something wrong with me. If I'm perfect, I won't be yelled at. So we call it the origin and expression exercise of going back and recognizing where do you think these experiences that could be very benign, and maybe they didn't even happen to you, but they happened around you. You observed like someone else getting in trouble and you're like, ooh, I'm never going to do that. So it's not always something that happened directly to us. It could be just, it's an observed experience that we make meaning from our experiences. And in those early years of our life, as we make sense of our experiences on an underdeveloped brain, most of that programming that we download that is running the show today is fundamentally flawed, negative, and self-sabotaging. So you got to go back to like, what conclusions did you draw that made you feel like you have to be perfect? What happened, or that you created a lesson for yourself that somehow if you are more in control, then you somehow can prevent bad things from happening, or that somehow you now feel like you have the right way. A lot of times there was like a chaotic environment and you're like, oh, you don't, tell if anyone's going to control you again in your life because you were, either had an over-controlling parent or a chaotic environment. So you can just start to see where it either becomes like an overcompensation, like I'm never going to do that again, or that's never going to happen to me again. I'm never going to put myself out there, or it's just a natural conclusion from what happened. So when you understand where it came from, then you have to understand how it shows up in present day. So present day, could be, oh, now I see, like I avoid difficult conversations, or I withhold my contributions, or I jump in and take over, or I try to save people from struggle. Or so just starting to recognize how often the various programs show up. So to your point, it's like you got to name it, you got to understand where it came from, and now you got to understand how it shows up in present day. Because if you don't understand what I call like the foundational characteristics of your program and how it looks for you, then it's going to be really hard to know even how to do the upgrade work. So then what I will say is we do have some in our white paper, which we can link. We do provide short little ways that you can start the upgrade process. But one of my favorite ways to start the upgrade process is whatever your faulty program is go get some objective data from people who know you well. And it's going to depend on what the program is. But like, if you have an overachiever or that tells you your value is conditional on what you get done, or you have the counterfeit that tells you like there's something wrong with you, you're not enough, etc., go ask people who know you well, both personally and professionally, what do they value about you? And it might feel like you're fishing for compliments, but what you're listening for is, does anyone say, I value how much you get done? Or do they say, well, you only have value when you do this? They're going to say things probably like fill in the blank. I value your compassion. I value your, humor. I value this, that. And you're starting to recognize that there's other ways that you can add value in your life than just whatever your faulty program, the limited scope. Like if you're a mime, my value comes from being the peacekeeper. My guess is most people aren't going to say they value you for keeping the peace, but that's what your program tells you. It's your job to do. So if you have a warped sense of your value or that your value is conditional, first ask people what they value about you and start to let yourself actually take that in. If you've got one that like, I'm just going to pick on like control freak or overachiever, then you're asking for like radical candor feedback. So you got to pick people who actually will be real with you, but say, okay, one of the things I've learned about myself is I have tendency to take on too much, or martyr, do it all myself, or not ask for help. And as someone who like I trust, I want you to tell me, what is it like for you to be around me or on the receiving end when I'm doing things myself, when I'm controlling, when I'm trying to be perfect? Fill in the blank of whichever faulty program it is. And you're going prepared for the feedback to sting. That is the point. Because if you get feedback that stings, like, well, it's annoying, or we feel bad, or da-da-da-da, or it makes you feel like you don't trust me, or, whatever it is, then the hope is the next time that instinct from that program kicks in, you will at least have a moment of trepidation to go, but what's the cause if I don't speak up in this meeting? I take this project over. I don't ask for help. I do this myself. I don't set a boundary. And so it sounds very elementary, but we're believing our thoughts as if it's true. And when you get objective feedback from other people who care about you and know you well, it starts to give you that moment to pause so that you can choose differently. And then we talk about then what are some other things you could start to do. So like once you get that feedback, it builds a foundation of confidence for you to go deeper. So I use a metaphor of like a swimming pool. So like the interviews are like the shallow end of the swimming pool, and now you're going to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So the next step would be, so let's say that I have the martyr program, which I've had. So it might be, okay, I've found out from people that, you know what, they're really irritated with me. They're worried about me because I do everything myself. I won't ask for help. They feel like I don't trust them, whatever it is. So that sucks. So then the next time I have that instinct to try to do it all myself, to not include other people in the process, to not ask for help, I'm going to hopefully go, okay, they told me it sucks. They told me they want to help. So, I'm going to go ask one of my team members to help me out on this. Or I'm going to bring people in earlier in a process and see what happens. Or I'm going to like actually say I don't have the capacity and see if like the relationship ends or the world ends. Like you pick something that is a little uncomfortable, but not paralyzing uncomfortable. And then when the worst you imagine likely doesn't happen, it's like Swiss cheese. You poke a hole in that program, and then you poke another hole, and then you poke another hole. And eventually it's like you poke enough holes, the integrity gives way and it lets go. You just keep running these experiments and these tests of, okay, how else can I then go a little deeper in the pool to challenge the validity of this program and what the head trash tells me my reality is. So I know there's a lot there, but that's kind of the process that we take. And then the nice thing is then once you do that initial upgrade, then when it wants to creep back in, you can go, I see you. Nope. Boom. And here's a tool that I learned in a workshop or whatever that I now lean on. So those tools and those things, because we teach them too, we call those the outer game of leadership. Those are helpful. Like how do you have effective growth feedback conversations? How do you go about prioritizing well? How do you go about leading people through change well? Like all of those things are super, super important. But as you can see, they don't do any good when you have an inner operating system that is being run by a faulty program that tells you it's not safe. And again, that's where like you'll do it for a while and then snap back and do it for a while and snap back. And that's why we really feel like it's important to do both. But if you got to do that upgrade work first.
So good. Coming back to why this is so important, there's this quote that I learned a long time ago that I have shared many times, and I believe it so much. The quote goes like this: how you do anything is how you do everything. And for some people listening, you may think, oh, this is to help me be a better leader at work, to advance my business and get unstuck from where we've been stuck or whatever, right? Whatever your faulty program is showing up in various areas of your life, right? Your health, your marriage, your parenting. It is what it is. And why I was sharing earlier that this is the deep inner work that when a workplace invests in this kind of change for people, the ripple effect of changing lives and then how we show up. We talked earlier about the first 10 years of life. No one intentionally is damaging their children to give them faulty programs, right? But you are more aware so that even in that parenting role, we're aware so we're not doing those things that could be then building these faulty programs. And so I just want to remind us of, how we do anything is how we do everything. And when you work on this deep inner work that's so hard, it's going to help you everywhere else. And when you're a workplace that brings this kind of work in versus not that the other isn't good, but when you prioritize the deep inner work to help your people versus here's my 3 steps to help you have better one-on-ones to build relationships, you are gifting that person such a meaningful thing to help change them. So just wanted to bring that up. And then you had shared, Rosie, with, how we change. I love that you helped me see that really you got to be aware of what the thing is. That's first before the reflection, then the reflection, and then starting to lean into the curiosity and empathy and some of the other tips that you shared here. I was just because I'm watching time and I know that these go so fast, I just wanted to have you maybe share like curiosity and empathy in action, maybe what that looks like in a coaching conversation, talking with someone through this. Like, I feel you, I hear you, I see you, and helping them, you're working through it together. We're in this together to make change. What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, first I would just say so my famous line that any of my clients hear me say over and over is congratulate yourself on being human. Secondly is saying, okay, I get it. And I also remind them, remember, this is use any corny metaphor you want, but this is a marathon, not a sprint. And so you've had these patterns since you were young. We're going to upgrade them, but you have to have some patience. You didn't come to this overnight. It's kind of like people who want to lose, I'm making this up, but 100 pounds yesterday. You don't lose a bunch of weight overnight. So it's just helping to level set when that impatience factor or whatever we're beating ourselves up about. You're normal, you're human. This is why things are harder than they need to be. And there is a path forward, but you have to be patient. You have to do the work and you have to trust the process. And I'm really intentional to say that to anybody, regardless of what their faulty program is, because I will say that when you follow this process, I've done this now with thousands of people, and I can say that I can count on both hands the number of people who it doesn't work for. And the reason it doesn't work for is they will not look in the mirror. It's like the Taylor Swift song, the line in Anti-Hero, I'll stare directly at the sun, but never in the mirror. It is so uncomfortable for them to lean into vulnerability and to look at themselves that they are just like Teflon and deflect everything, and it doesn't work. And so I'm also very clear with our clients that I'm like, my rule of thumb when it comes to coaching, because we do consulting and other work, is I will work as hard as you, but I'm not going to work harder on your development than you are. And we also only coach the willing. We only work with the willing. And so there's been times where we've been asked to kind of do more corrective coaching with someone who's struggling. And a lot of times they will lean into the process. But there are some people, again, I can count on both hands, maybe 10 people out of 1,000 that just no matter how you try to make it a safe space and how you try to normalize it, they're just like, oh, hell no. I'm like, well, I can't. I wish you well. I can't help you. And that happens. So, but for the most part, when people finally decide to lean into the cringe and let the guard down and realize there's nothing wrong with them and they do the work, it is transformative. So I share that because I think it's why I'm so obsessed with normalizing the messiness of being human is we get in our own space and we think it's just us. No one else struggles like this. I should somehow be immune. I should somehow be superhuman. I should somehow have it all together. And it's bullshit. So it is. And so then I also think that what can happen though, is that when things get hard, or if you're leading a team and they're struggling through change, we do a lot of change work. And I say the reason most change efforts fail is because we're not caring for the messiness of being human, right? We're using all the great processes. We're using, Kaizen and Six Sigma and all of these great frameworks and ProSci, and pick a framework of how do you technically move people through change. But we're not caring for the fact that You're dealing with messy human beings who are emotional creatures who have these faulty programs, and you have to make it safe for them to lean into the change and safe for them to get out of their comfort zone. And that's what we don't do because we're trying to move too fast. We're trying to move too furious. And then what we do is we stand in judgment. Well, they're just rigid. They don't do this. And we start doing the blame game. And that doesn't help anybody. So instead, we can lean into curiosity. Like I always say, like, what are the ugly monsters in your head saying about change? Or what's the narrative? What's the head trash that is coming up for you that makes this feel so unsettling? Let's just name it. Again, get it out. So you can ask that for your team. What makes this so unsettling for you? Or even like your family. What is the most unsettling thing about this? Or what is the most worrisome thing about this? Because when you get it out of someone's head and you hear it, then you can start to like fact check it, lean in, whatever. But what we do is we just don't talk about it. It's the elephant in the room.
If you listeners, I'm thinking of mine here too, think about the things, the habits that you do that keep you on track and how easy you get off track when you're not doing those habits. Let's say taking time in the morning for yourself to plan the day, your morning routine. Let's say exercise, drinking enough water, drinking water regularly, reading and learning. Maybe in your spiritual life, it's reading your Bible or whatever you read, right? When we're on, there's such a different experience of life. And we can recognize it when we're on, but we really recognize it when it falls off. And it's so easy to fall off, right? So easy. It's like, hasn't really been 3 weeks since I ever closed my rings on my watch. Like, wow, that's, and you get back on, but you can feel the difference so much. This is some of the deepest work we will ever do for ourselves. And we're gonna thrive through it. We're also gonna stumble through it. And that'll be a constant because we're human, right? And we get to keep working at it. It's like the lifelong learning at the very core, the most important work. And so if you can just think about, oh, when I'm not eating healthy or doing the things, whatever those are for you that are the habits, just know that this is our inner operating system, right? And so our inner operating system is so profound. And if we're not working on it, it's just going to constantly show up anywhere we go.
Yeah.
So,
well, 100%. And what I would add to that, Nikki, 2 things. And I think one of my past Rosie in my pockets, I don't know which one, but there's an exercise that we do regularly. I do it myself. We do it with teams and groups, and it's so simple, but it's called Ingredients to Be My Best. And it's really just taking a moment to go, okay, if showing up as a leader is about maximizing our positive impact on the world by becoming our best, fully authentic self and supporting others to basically get out of their own way, well, do I even know who I am at my best? So I have people go, I'm at my best when? I'm at my best when I've had a good night's sleep. I'm at my best when I've had a really tough, sweaty workout. I'm at my best when my calendar's not overscheduled. I'm at my best when I can be present with my loved ones. The list goes on. And then you look at what are the ingredients that increase the likelihood that that version of you can show up. And here's the kicker. It's not a one and done exercise. So you have to revisit it. I encourage people to do it at a minimum quarterly. I mentioned we're going through a bunch of health crises with my family right now. And I'm just going to say it's a shit show. And so I had to look at who I normally am. I know who I am at my best, but being able to feed some of that is not even feasible right now. So it's what in this season can I do to be the best version of me in this season? And the best version of me in this season is maybe not the version of me that was, 4 months ago, but in this season, what do I need to tend to? And not doing it with judgment. And so when we compare ourselves to a past version of ourselves and we start standing in judgment, well, I used to be really diligent about my workout. I used to this, I used to this, I used to that. If you realize, God, I'm feeling crappy or sluggish, I need to get back to those ingredients to be my best. That's going to make me feel better. That's one thing. But if we're judging ourselves and go, gosh, why can't I fill in the blank? Why can't I do things as quickly as I used to? Why do my clothes not fit like they used to? Why am I not able to do blah, blah, blah? And we're starting to judge ourselves. That's not helpful. So I think as the seasons of life and life does what it does, we need to go to, okay, in this chapter, in this season, when things are going great, awesome. I can, I'm making this up. Maybe I can get my workout in 7 days a week and da, da, da. In this season, if I can get 2, I'm going to go that's okay. And what do I need the other days or whatever it is? Or, my sleep can't look like it normally does, but here's what it can look like. Because otherwise it's not helpful. We get rigid about it. So I just want to put that out there that I love everything you said. And we have to recognize life isn't stagnant. And again, those faulty programs can start to creep back in during our most stressful seasons. That's when our default wiring creeps back in. And so I always say in times of stress, we have to be really cognizant of it. And so like I use a metaphor of like when our faulty programs are taking over, it's like our hand is in front of our face and we're trying to peek through our fingers and it's hijacking us. And we do the work to upgrade and we move our hand kind of off to the side. So it doesn't disappear, but it's like, oh, it's on the periphery. I have so much more that's opened up to me. And when stress hits and life does what it does, that hand starts to creep back in. It's never going to completely cover our face, but it's like, whoo, it's right there and you can feel it. And that's where having tools to go, oop, I know how to move you back out again. Oop, I know how to, those subsequent upgrades. But like, I mean, again, I've done this work forever and I'm still a human being. And so I'm like, oh, okay, I know in this season of my life, I got to lean on my tools heavy because otherwise this sucker I'm not going to be fit for human consumption and I'm not going to be good to anybody. So it's an ongoing practice. And that's why when you do this in like with other people, when you like people having a core and common language, when you do this in an organization, besides doing your individual work, there is something to be said about combining that with group work, because when you have core and common language and tools to be able to support one another and go, oh, that's just my overachiever, or oh, that's that, it makes all the difference in the world because we're not meant to go that alone.
It's so good. I feel like we could go on for another hour or two or whatever, way more than that. So maybe these courageous leadership conversations just really take a deep dive in the faulty programs and cousins for the unforeseeable future, because there's so much more to talk about. I didn't even get to half of my notes or questions. So we'll be back. We're going to do more, I promise. But let's wrap this up, Rosie. I have one homework opportunity from what you shared. I'm going to do this too. I encourage us to journal as many answers to, I am at my best when, and remember in this season, or maybe I put that in the front, in this season, I am at my best when, and see how many you can fill out and really work backwards from. That's what you're looking for right now, right? To be your very best with all that you have learned so far. Rosie, take us home. Maybe tell us as well when the book is coming out to remind us, but any other key takeaways or sending people to a next step.
Yeah. So the book is called Future Proofing Leadership, and it does a deep dive, not just into the faulty programs, but what are the most common areas where we struggle and how these work against us. So like growth feedback and other things like that. So it's in final edits right now. I think it's officially going to be out next spring. I'm supposed to have early copies in my hand December, and will be in pre-order soon. So in the meantime, you can go to our website, and we'll put a link in the show notes as well, salveopartners.com. And we have our white paper where we go deep into kind of the methodology and some of the key findings about our research project. That was kind of the precursor to the book, where we're going to go a lot deeper. And obviously, like, we're happy to have consultations with anybody. I mean, this is so fun. And it's so fun that it's resonating for people, because I want everyone to recognize that you're human, you're normal. And if one or more of these resonate for you, what I hope is that it helps give you some insight of why things seem harder for you than they do for other people. Why is it that your friend or colleague, again, can go listen to a motivational speaker or listen to a podcast or read a book on fill in the blank, how to more effectively have, feedback conversations, how to set boundaries, how to do this, how to do that. And they're like rocking it. And you're like, what the hell is wrong with me? Because I'm on the struggle bus. There's nothing wrong with you. It's harder for you because you have different faulty program wiring than they do. And they probably struggle with something you don't. And I want to normalize that for people, because we do a number on ourselves, and that head trash is so gnarly. And like, we're not going to get anywhere when we keep listening to it.
Well, thank you so much, Rosie. I want to acknowledge the tireless efforts that you've put in, just the constant work and a lot of backstory to bring this to life for people, to really help us change the things that really matter, and a ripple effect on the lives at work and way beyond. Everywhere we go, it's a lot. And we just thank you for the work that you and your team have done. And I can't wait to keep learning with you. We're going to take everyone on a journey in this courageous leadership conversation series and beyond. And I can't wait for the book to come out. So we'll see you all next time.
I'm Rosie Ward, and this is Show Up as a Leader. To learn more, head over to PeopleForwardNetwork.com and, of course, hit that follow button.